If you're just joining us, welcome to Engage in Trade International Women's Day. The presentation will begin momentarily. We're just giving people a few moments to log in and we will begin in just a moment. Good afternoon and welcome to Engage in Trade International Women's Day. My name is Stella Sheehan and I'm the Deputy Director here at the World Trade Center St. Louis. Thank you for taking the time to join us this afternoon on this special global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural and political achievements of women worldwide. This day also marks a call to action for accelerating women's equality with the theme of Embrace Equity this year. The aim of the theme this year is to get the world talking about why equal opportunities aren't enough. People start from different places, so true inclusion and belonging require equitable action. And I've no doubt our esteemed panelists will help us tease that theme over the next hour or so and inspire you to do the same. So just a few housekeeping rules before we begin. You will be muted for the duration of the presentation. If you wish to ask a question, please do so via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens, and we will do our best to get to as many of those as we can at the end of the formal discussion. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our Executive Director, Mr. Tim Nowak. Tim has led the World Trade Center for over 15 years now, bringing years of international business experience in Africa, Asia Pacific, Europe, the Middle East, and South America. He's a 2014 Eisenhower Fellow and a proud Mizzou grad. And I just want to add on this International Women's Day that the importance of allies in women's lives, both at home and at work. So I want to thank Tim for being that ally for his predominantly female staff at the World Trade Center, not just today, but year round, together with our FDI Director, Sean Mullins, and our President and CEO, Rodney Krim. So thank you, Tim, and over to you.
Oh my gosh, how do you top that? Thank you, Stella. I was just going to say you beat me to the punch. I wanted to kind of twist it and go the other way with this and just say how blessed I am to work with some of the brightest, creative, and confident people that you will meet. The women in our office are just so inspirational. And Stella, you included, Betsy Cohen, Susan Spitz, Suzanne Sierra, Karen Gentles, and Annie Mbale. They really are a wonderful team of leaders that I get a chance to work with each and every day. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm also grateful for those three special individuals who have lent their time and talent with us today to share a little bit of background and advice and some of their story. And so with that, I will introduce our three esteemed panelists. First, Nicole Dotson. Nicole is the Northside Economic Empowerment Center Manager for our partners at the St. Louis Development Corporation. Nicole is a St. Louis native and has a passion for economic growth, education, and community building. With more than 20 years of experience in finance, workforce development, management, and facility training workshops, she has worked with diverse groups of individuals in reentry, community development, nonprofit, and corporate sectors. Countless individuals have been coached, trained, mentored, and counseled by Nicole in the areas of personal and professional development, career counseling, and relationship enrichment. She has a Bachelor of Arts degree in business management from Webster University and recently completed coursework at the master's level in clinical mental health from Lindenwood University. Nicole, thank you for being here with us. With Nicole is Martha Garcia Campen. Many of us know Martha. Martha is currently the president and CEO of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce of Metro St. Louis, and she's very excited about this new opportunity, knowing that she is fulfilling her purpose of working in the community. She is committed to serving the Hispanic Chamber members and the Hispanic community and the greater St. Louis Metro, lifting all to new heights of understanding and shared prosperity. Martha's career has been focused on cultural communication strategies across multiple industries and sectors, cementing her skills in bringing diverse groups together toward a common purpose and vision. She's the former Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at St. Charles Community College. In addition to being a member of the Hispanic Chamber for over a decade and a true champion of its many efforts, she was also the past chairwoman of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce Foundation Board. Martha, thank you for being with us as well. And last but certainly not least is Erin Lembach. Erin is the global process owner focusing on origin management and HS classification for Bayer Corporation. Let's see you say that 3 times. That's quite the title, Erin. I love it. Erin joined Bayer in 2012 and has held leadership and strategy positions with the international trade and customs compliance fields. In these positions, she has experience managing a global trade import team, leading global trade strategies across all regions, and being a liaison with government agencies such as the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, Food and Drug Administration, and Drug Enforcement Administration. Erin is also the current president of the St. Louis Trade Compliance Practitioners Roundtable and has been a member of this organization for over 10 years. And she does an absolutely terrific job in leading that very important organization. We're at the World Trade Center. We're really grateful for the partnership and work with that group of professionals around the region, largely led by Susan Spitz on our team. So Erin, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Tim.
So what a group we have. And Stella, I'm going to kick it back over to you. And thanks again for being with us today.
Thank you, Tim. All right, and welcome to our esteemed panelists. So we're going to dive right in. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background and your current role? And Nicole, maybe we'll start with you.
Hello, everyone. Happy Women's International Day. As Tim mentioned, I am the manager for the Northside Economic Empowerment Center. And what's so amazing about my role is that I get the opportunity to work with small and minority businesses by, having the opportunity to provide business empowerment, build capacity, and workforce development for not only our businesses, but also our residents. And with that being said, I get the opportunity to work with general contractors, allowing them the opportunity to become, certified, and ensuring that they have all the resources they need to ensure that we can not only certify their businesses, but ensure that their businesses have the legitimacy it needs, such as their FEIN number, making sure they're registered, to make sure that they have the proper resources and access to capital and the things that we need to either help them start their business, for individuals who are looking to start their business, as well as grow their business or sustain their business. And so with that being said, it gives us the opportunity to work in the community to help strengthen our community and just provide things that they need, that they lack and don't know that they need, so that they can be successful.
Great, thank you, Nicole. And same question to Martha.
Yes, hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I am a bicultural cisgender Latina. My pronouns are she, her, and ella, combining culture with my gender. I was raised in Kansas City, Missouri as a first-generation Mexican-American and studied international marketing management with an emphasis in Latin America, launching my career as a director of Hispanic marketing for a consumer products company. I moved to St. Louis when deciding to marry my college sweetheart, as many of us Latinas who are here in St. Louis have done. If you're from St. Louis, apparently you don't leave. That's what I've learned. And I was told that. I was warned about that before. I'm happy to be here, though. I'm really happy to be here because I've built my career providing cross-cultural communication strategies to emerging businesses and professionals. I recently served in higher education as a chief diversity officer, and now I am so honored to be able to serve as the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce Metro St. Louis president CEO, where we get to support and resource the Hispanic business community. Thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you, Martha. And I can empathize. My husband is from St. Louis too, so it seems to be a way, that St. Louisans have of attracting others to the region. Erin, the same question for you.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So I'm Erin. I am a global process owner for our International Trade and Customs Compliance Global Organization at Bayer. I've spent my whole career, about 19 years, working for fairly large corporations. I've been with Bayer for a little over 10 years, all within the international trade space. Before that, I spent 5 years for 2 other companies within the same space. And actually before that, I was in the IT field for about 3 years. So just within my international trade space over the last 15 years, it's given me the opportunity to work with so many other business fields. Think supply chain, procurement, finance, even IT. And with that, I've been able to also work with so many cultures around the world and tons of different countries. So it's really given me a front row spot to kind of see some of these equity challenges, but also success stories. And then, as Martha said, if you've lived in St. Louis, you probably don't leave. And I've lived in St. Louis my whole life. I actually married my high school sweetheart, and we have 2 boys that keep us very busy. So that's me personally. So I just want to thank you guys for giving me this opportunity, for having me, and also being able to join these other 2 amazing women today on the panel. Thank you.
Well, you are all amazing women in our eyes, so thank you all for being here, and busy ladies as well. So really appreciate you taking the time. Martha, maybe we'll start with you again on this next question. The International Women's Day theme is Embrace Equity. So as we said, celebrating the social, cultural, economic, political achievements of women. And the day also marks a call to action for accelerating women's equality. How has this played out in your day-to-day interactions?
Well, I think it's important to note the difference between equity and equality. And there's been a lot of talk around that lately. Both must be achieved. Equity will only come when we grasp the need to assure, equality will only come when we grasp the need to assure equity across all socioeconomic and cultural differences. And I'm going to emphasize the cultural aspect. We've learned that white Anglo-Americans start from a privileged vantage point. Lots of research, lots of studies to support that, and traditionally males more than females. here on International Women's Day. When we bring in cultural heritage, language, and historical socioeconomic disadvantages, we see that most minority and foreign-born women are starting their equity journey from a lower platform than their white American counterparts. My primary day-to-day focus is to help bridge the cultural divide for Latinas, to break through some of these barriers and to be offered some of those advantages that we need to resource us to reach our full potential.
Great, thank you, Martha. And Nicole, I see you nodding there, so I'm going to pass the baton to you on that question as well.
Awesome. So I definitely understand what Martha is saying, because in my role and just looking at the overall goals of SLDC, our goal is to look at those unprecedented and unmarginalized areas that lack resources, education, mental health, as well as employment opportunities, to ensure that we can look at diversity and what that looks like and how it applies to those areas who do not and are not made privy to these things that I mentioned. What I love so much is about just our overall goals is that we look to empower, develop, and transform our community to ensure that they understand that they are first. First, because we know what the struggles and the barriers are. So when I think about our goals and just some of those cycles, we look at collaboration, we look at inclusion, we also look at data informed and the data that they're not made privy to or we're not made privy to. We do look at equity as well as equality and empathy, and making sure that, you know, there's some accountability as well as transparency that is being provided to our community to ensure that they know that we understand what those areas of need is and what resources need to be provided. And our goal is to see how can we get that to you and it doesn't stress you over helping you know that we're one and that we're doing, you know, that we're able to change lives one person at a time.
Very lofty goals there, and you are certainly living it out every day, Nicole. So we appreciate that that perspective. Erin, same question to you.
Yeah, so I would say from the corporate perspective, the call to action for accelerating women's equality, how it's affected my day-to-day interaction. One, it's just made me much more aware the more and more we talk about it. When I'm in business meetings or I'm on projects, I'm looking around to see how many women are at the table, in particular, how many women leaders there are. We get a ton of announcements that get sent out to us, you know, via email or whatnot. And when those announcements from my company or even newsletters from industry resources that I'm subscribed to, when I get those, I'm looking at it. I'm aware of how many women are represented in those announcements or within new roles. So that's one thing that I've seen over the last few years from me personally. My day-to-day is just more of my awareness within my day-to-day interaction. And then I would say from my role, I do a lot of training, a lot of mentoring. I've been able to hire some people within some roles that I've had, and I do specifically seek out other women to get their input or other leaders to get their input, or seek out other women that could benefit from the training or advice that I have to develop them further. So not keeping the information, the expertise that I have in, but seeking out, you know, especially younger women that are coming into the field, like making sure that I'm passing along the training and advice to them, but also women that have been in the field for quite some time, making sure that they're doing the same thing to make sure that everyone has equal opportunity to learn and move forward and become leaders.
Great, thank you so much. And you mentioned mentoring, so I'm going to come back to Nicole, because I know with your very broad experience in the community, Nicole, you've worked with very diverse groups across a variety of sectors, finance to counselling to mentoring, and of course the work that SLDC is doing, particularly with the Economic Justice Action Plan.
Yes.
Where do you see the most acute needs in the St. Louis region at the moment in terms of equity?
So as I did mention, and I probably jumped a little bit ahead, the acute need for us is just strengthening our neighborhoods, making sure that we close the wealth gap, improving our health and our educational outcomes, and expanding our tax base and growing the city's population. It's not just one probably honestly acute need, Stella, because these are some very important areas that need to be addressed, and they are acute when it comes to our community as well as our women, and ensuring that these things are provided to ensure that they have what they need to, again, thrive, grow, and be successful in their journey and what they're looking to do.
Great, thank you, Nicole. Martha, having literally worked as a Chief Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Officer and now leading the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, you have a somewhat unique perspective. What are you hearing from women? Are we there? Are we embracing equity? Where are we at the moment?
Well, in short, not really. By my experiences, especially through these last few years after the post-pandemic, BIPOC women are exhausted. While many organizations state that they want to include multicultural women in advancement opportunities, my lived experience, sorry, phone of course would go off right now. My lived experience, as well as those of many other women that I've worked with, is that there's still a lot of bias and stereotyping that still exist, even among women. Women of various cultural backgrounds choose, or sometimes we're required to suppress our true cultural identity and expression in order to advance in their careers. We're asked to speak more quietly, not talk with our hands, or be so emotional when we're feeling passionate about an issue, or we're told to speak up if we are more culturally reserved. Our accents many times are misinterpreted as a lack of intelligence, education, or knowledge. And for many culturally diverse women, how we choose to present ourselves, our attire, our hairstyle, our jewelry, sometimes is criticized, or worse, not embraced in various environments. Maybe not overtly, but subtly, implicitly. Many times the perpetrator is not even aware of their own bias or microaggressions against us. So even our cultural values sometimes are questioned in the workplace. We're made to choose between our values and our workplace norms, behaviors, or expectations. And these are all subtle cultural inequities that prevent us from being considered for promotions, grants, opportunities for advancement. So I would say that embracing equity would mean removing these barriers from our, bringing our full cultural self into the workplace and advancing from our authentic sense of identity and expression.
Some very important points there. Thank you. Erin, did you have something you wanted to add? You look like you were maybe going to jump in there.
No, I see a lot of what Martha mentioned, working with different women around the world. So I agree with a lot of that.
Absolutely, yes, that
Erin.
resonates here too.
I do
Nicole,
too, Martha, yes.
we're all nodding in agreement.
Yeah, we're not in agreement because I'm sure we've all had a challenge or two in the workplace just as a woman. And so something that Martha talked about, and something that I look at is, we are unfortunately, just made to really conform to some parts of the workplace to ensure that we are able to get those promotions, are able to at least be considered to have a seat at the table, and making sure that, we can distinguish the difference between our personal and our professional, and that it doesn't bleed over into what we're trying to do. We want to ensure that we are the face of the organization, because those are some of the things that's also looked at. Do I fit the face or the mantra of this particular organization? Can I articulate properly to ensure that I can represent our organization when I go out? Or, I could have the same credential as my peer, but yet, because I am a woman, does that take me out of the running of being a chosen candidate for this same opportunity? So just listening to Martha when she talked about, the way that we wear our hair, maybe the color of our hair, do we have on the right jewelry, just making sure that our attire is something that's, presentable for us, plays a huge role in when we look at equity again versus equality in the workplace.
And if I may, Stella,
Of course.
just thank you for that question, because I think on International Women's Day, it's very important to address that. And Erin, I appreciate your validation from a global perspective. And I think it's also right here in the United States, and it's definitely here in St. Louis. So just the opportunity to provide that awareness for our audience, I think is very important. And I appreciate that opportunity today.
Well, you definitely hit a nerve there, Martha, for sure. And as we were just talking about, our attire in the warm-up session here right before we went live, and so that is something we think about all the time. Even on a Zoom or in the office, or just the importance of being able to bring your whole authentic self, as you said, Nicole, to work is so important, and having the bandwidth to be able to do that is so important. All right.
I'm going to add.
Oh, go ahead.
Also,
Yes, sir.
sorry. I would also say from a corporate perspective, the different fields within our businesses too. So I mentioned that I started out in the IT field very early on in my career. And in both of those early roles, I was the only woman in my group for my very first job out of school, and then my second job. And I was also younger. And so it's hard to speak up in those situations as a woman. And nothing against the men or the men leaders. They were very great. And sometimes it was after the fact, after I left the role, that they would give me a little more advice that I wish I had had early on to just be more confident. But that's one of the things that I love in my current role, that I am able to train people and I've given the opportunity to mentor. So I do love to seek out people that are newer in their career to give them the confidence that, hopefully as women, that we can just continue on and be leaders and have the same opportunities.
Yeah, a very daunting position to be in, Erin. So kudos to you. That's not easy for sure, to be the only woman in the room sometimes. And just as well, as I mentioned in the intro, it is so important to have those allies at work. And I'm certainly very fortunate in my role to be surrounded by allies with both female and male. So I'm very grateful for that. Erin, we're going to stick with you. So as a businesswoman working for Bayer, of course, a global multinational, how do you think the US stacks up, say, against Germany, for example, Bayer's home country, of course, in terms of equity in the workplace?
Yeah, so it's hard because there's room for improvement everywhere. So if I'm looking specifically at US versus Germany or even other countries, I personally think the US is moving in the right direction. We're maybe a little bit further along than what I see in some of the other countries that I work with specifically. But definitely over time, I've seen that. So like I mentioned early on in my career, you didn't see that as much, but in like the last, say, 5 years, it's a bigger topic, and I see the movement happening more in the US, specifically to say Bayer in Germany. So also in their defense, they're a very established older company within Germany. So I think that they are also moving in the right direction, but maybe not above where the US is at this point. But as we're seeing change management within that old established company, we're seeing new roles being established or people leaving the company for one reason or another. I feel like we are seeing a better focus on filling those roles with equity in mind and being represented. So I think we're in the right direction, but I personally think maybe the US is a little farther ahead than what I've seen in other countries. I also would say, not just specific to Germany and the US, but as I've gone within my career, you know, you might not have seen that as much in APAC regions or LATAM regions, the countries within those regions. And I feel like more and more women are being selected or represented in leadership or projects. So we're in the right direction, but there's a lot of room for improvement there. One final comment too, from being in the St. Louis trade group. So I've been the president the last couple of years, but I've been involved within the last 10 years, almost the whole time we've been established. And I would say when I first started with that organization, most of the directors of the St. Louis companies were male. I would say the majority of them are. And as time has gone on, I've seen more and more leaders within the St. Louis area from our compliance divisions being selected as females, or women being promoted to other positions and leaving the field and being promoted in a supply chain field or whatnot. So again, we're moving in the right direction. There's a ton of improvement. Maybe I'm biased because I sit in the US, but I do think that the US is maybe a little bit further ahead than what I've seen in other countries.
And that's certainly encouraging to hear that, for sure. Martha or Nicole, anything to add there in terms of your experience? No, okay.
No, I was gonna say no, not at this time. Thank
Not
you.
this time.
I
All right.
think Erin summed it up. Thank you, Erin.
Absolutely. All right. So kind of a general question now for the panelists. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw outsized effects on women in particular in terms of their workforce participation and that eternal quest for work-life balance that we all strive for. What do you think we can do better to support women in the workforce? And Nicole, maybe we'll start with you.
Absolutely. Thank you. So the first thing that comes to mind for me, Stella, is how do I continue to still help women continue to accelerate and be great? And I know that I'm answering a question with a question, but it has to start with me first to ensure that, you know, I am doing the right thing. It's important that we continue to let women know what opportunities are still made or are just simply made readily available to them, because sometimes they don't know that. The great thing about having the opportunity to work in the community and do workforce development, you know, being my former background, as well as the Northside Economic Empowerment Center, again, we get that opportunity to help women who may be stay-at-home moms know that they can start their own business. We give women the opportunity to mentor women. I do, you know, get the opportunity to mentor women and let them know that they do count and that they are a major part of this world, and that we need them, but also providing employment opportunities, training, and also helping them know that they can accelerate in their positions and helping them improve their skill by helping them improve their skill sets so that they can get some of those higher paying jobs and promotions within the workplace. But one of the biggest ones that stand out for me when we look at what can we do to better support our women is helping them with the flexibility around remote employment. When we have children, when we, you know, are just trying to do what we call the amazing work-life balance, it's important that our women have that flexibility around maybe being able to work remotely and also having access to childcare that's not so expensive that I have to keep my child home because I can't afford to send my child to daycare and try to work a job and try to sustain our home while trying to also make a livable wage. So the amazing thing about my role is that I get to work with other partners, such as our MasterCard, who has what's our MasterCard Digital Doors program that focus solely on women entrepreneurs. And I get to work with other businesses who are looking to empower and help women grow to just basically be the best version of themselves that they know how. And so I am very lucky, honored, and privileged to have that opportunity to serve as the face of one of the many faces of this organization, as well as SLDC, to be able to interact with women like myself, women like you, who are looking for those additional resources just to ensure that they can continue to just add those things to their repertoire of just trying to excel, accelerate and excel within their job, their homes, their local churches, and even their own businesses.
Thank you, Nicole. I feel like you touched on everything there that could possibly affect women's participation. That's a very holistic view. Thank you. And you have that, of course, unique perspective of being in the position that you are at the Empowerment Center. So it's very so refreshing to hear that, and to hear that you both identify the problems and you're looking for solutions to those problems to help women. So thank you for that great work that you do. Martha, same question to you. What are you seeing from your vantage point?
Well, the pandemic was very hard on women of color for multiple reasons that Nicole's already addressed, many of them. Childcare, just for one huge issue for all of us women, most of us who have any children at home, who also were having to Zoom into their classes while I'm supposed to be working during the day. Yeah, so that was just, I call it Zoom land. I feel like I transferred over to a different planet during the pandemic, and now I'm back on Earth, and it's like, okay, what's changed now? That's what it feels like for me personally. But as far as some of the disparities that we learned about during pandemic is absolutely the disparity in technology access, right? So not all of us have the capability to just Zoom in for a meeting, for work, for class. People were having to operate from their phones. They were having to just figure out how to do life through their little phones. A lot of people didn't have great internet access. They didn't have Wi-Fi. So we learned a lot about technology. I was a diversity officer during that time, and our college had to just really jump on providing lots and lots of technology for our students and for our co-workers, just to make sure that we all could have access to do the things that we wanted to do and needed to do. So that was a big one, technology. The other was access to healthcare information, especially in one's own language, native language. So just hearing about it, first of all, but then hearing about it in a language that many people are more comfortable or can receive that information more accurately in, regardless of the language, that was not available. I appreciate one of my colleagues, Gabriela Ramirez Arellano, who works with STL Juntos, and she and Lorraine Bayon, they started this STL Juntos really out of that pandemic lack of access in Spanish language information, and then it just grew and grew from there. So I'm grateful for her work and their work in that area, because that wasn't existent before. What would I say as far as what can we do to better support women in the workplace? I would suggest that we learn about everyone's various cultural values and what's important to them. We all come from a different cultural heritage, and we bring those values and beliefs and norms and customs, behaviors into the workplace, or as we talked about earlier, we hide them, we suppress them, we push them down, and we say, oh, no, I can't behave that way, or I can't express that without in safety. So I would say just take some time to get to know the various women in your organization and the cultural heritage that they come from, out of a genuine relationship building curiosity to know them as a person. Because there's that trust factor, there's that shyness, oh, I have to be a certain standard to be accepted. If anybody knew that this is in my background, they wouldn't accept me. there's a lot of that. So let's just kind of slow down and take some time to get to know each other from a cultural heritage standpoint is one thing that I would suggest.
I love that. Thank you, Martha. That slowing down is so important sometimes, to just take a moment and breathe. And certainly shout out to Gabriella. Actually, she joined us last year for this very event. So I know she's continuing to do fantastic work. Erin, same question to you.
Well, I also just want to comment on what Martha said about like getting to know the people within your organization and different cultures. Before I answer the question from my own perspective, that was huge for us. We all, you know, at Bayer, we're a very big company, so the majority of us did have access to the technology and we were able to quickly switch to Teams. So a lot of us were not completely affected by that, but we all learned pretty quickly that the pandemic was different for our colleagues where they were. So the pandemic for us in the US, we have different things to focus on or complain about, was much different for our colleagues in China, our colleagues in Australia, Germany, whatnot. So I think pretty quickly for us to be flexible and spend the first 5, even 10 minutes just checking in on people. We adapted to that pretty quickly to be like, how are you doing? You know, in China, they were allocated certain food for a certain time and we didn't deal with that. Here, you know, in my role sitting in St. Louis, and it was like, are you okay? Is there anything we can do to help you or support you from where we're at? If we can, we will. So I was just thinking of that as Martha was talking, that I think that's important from a corporate perspective to keep in mind on a global level who you're working with and how your colleagues' day might be different from yours, and not just jump into business topic and you know, kind of get personal there. And then also my response to this is big on what Nicole said on flexibility. So a lot of us in the corporate world thankfully had the opportunity to kind of take our positions and work from home. But as women, a lot of times we also feel the need to be the management of our household and our families. And we also feel the need to be 100% at all the roles that we're taking on. And so quickly, our workspace and our household family space were the same space. And so that's difficult and that's a huge challenge. So flexibility, I think, is key from a business perspective to continue on to allow women or anybody to have that flexibility to try to manage all of your roles. So maybe have working hours that are different than the standard, but even down to, hey, if I need to pause this meeting because I have a child that I need to tell them to be a little bit quieter, to accept that, hey, we're going to pause the meeting for a second, or if there's some commitments with work and we need to make some last minute changes. I think that flexibility is key for us to balance having all of those roles in one space.
Great points there. Thank you. Thank you all so much. And I will just add, Erin, from my own perspective, coming from Ireland, you know, they at one point had travel restrictions of you couldn't go further than 5 kilometers, you know, and so to your point about, you know, your colleagues in China, it was very different for different people worldwide, for sure. And the flexibility is so important. I know my children have all made guest appearances on, you know, on board meetings, I think even, you know, at once or twice during the pandemic. So definitely a need for flexibility there going forward. Absolutely. So just a reminder to our attendees, if you want to ask questions, please do so via the Q&A at the bottom of your screens. We still have a little bit of time here. So we do have a question here actually. Let's see here. As the father of a young daughter, what advice does the panel have in preparing and instilling confidence at an early age? So I don't know who wants to tackle that one.
That is such a great question, and I just so appreciate the person who asked this. Thank you. That gives me lots of hope. It really does. It really does. You know, you were talking, and Erin, I so appreciate your comment about flexibility being so important, because I think that's kind of where we start in our advice for our young people is being flexible in our expectations of one another, maybe. Learning to listen first, learning to ask genuine, respectful questions to get to know another person. Don't come with your own assumptions, which is actual bias or stereotyping that you would bring into a situation. So I always like to say also that we all have bias, right? We all have bias. That is how we were raised to learn how to survive in the world, right? What's good and bad, what's right and wrong, what's safe, not safe. That's how we were nurtured and brought up. We all have it. The question is, to the young daughter as she grows up, and for all of us, what are we going to learn through our own experiences? What information are we going to gather? What knowledge are we going to gain about one another, various cultures, various people from various walks of life, instead of just bringing our own bias and stereotype into a situation and expecting that should be the norm and the standard. So that flexibility, it goes back to flexibility, it goes back to listening, it goes back to not bringing, it's, sometimes there's a standard and a norm in a cultural environment. And if we don't live up to it, then we're not seen as promotable, as an example. So speaking into that, you know, people who come from a place of privilege, speaking into a allyship, defending, coming to the side of someone who may not feel that she has a voice in a situation, becoming her ally, speaking with her to power, speaking to power. There's just so many things there. But I think my bottom line with that is just kind of being open, willing to learn, willing to gain understanding from another that might help us to be a better person.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Martha. I think that even I have younger kids too, but the standard and the norms are constantly changing. So being open to all those changes. So as you're raising a young daughter, I don't have daughters, I have sons, but I think of it that way too. Just being open to things that are not the standard and the norm. So I'll throw out a really crazy example. When I was little, my brothers played ice hockey and I wanted to be a hockey player. And my dad was like, no, you could be a figure skater. And so I kind of did other things. And now I'm thinking I should have been a hockey player. And I have friends that have daughters that are hockey players. I'm like, I could have done that, you know, and I think now that standard and that norm is changing. So as we're raising our younger children, to be very open that there's not specific tasks or roles or jobs that are only women can do or only men can do. And if they come to you and they say, hey, I want to try this, let them try it. And if it's not their thing, it's not going to be their thing. And they have to learn that. So they have to fail to succeed. And it's hard to do that as a parent, to watch your kids fail at some things, or sometimes they'll succeed and it's not the path you thought that they were on, but be very supportive of them.
And I won't, because actually Martha and Aaron, you guys actually covered quite a bit. But what I would say, just being the only child, but not having children, is one of the things that is very important to me is, what are we modeling? What are we modeling as parents, but what are we just modeling as a human being? And what do our children see? What do children that's not even our children see? But what I learned was, so often, and Aaron, you brought up a point around basically tradition. And when we look at the types of families that we come from, what I've saw is that if my mother was a nurse, I want to be a nurse. You know, if my father was a fireman, I'm going to be a fireman. And when you do break the cycle of, I'm going to go in a different direction, you know, the family is actually sometimes distraught. I'm just going to be honest, right? And so by being a young parent, as Aaron stated, you know, as Martha stated, let your kids know it's okay. It's okay to be whatever you want to be, but it's also important that we're able to support them in that role 100%, whatever that looks like. What comes to mind is education, because education is very important. But we also know that sometimes our children are not college material. And if they're not college material, please let them know that they're still great. They're still wonderful. They still matter. They still count. And that there's so many other opportunities out here that honestly would measure up to training such as a vocational school, or getting into some of those other non-traditional sectors that still will allow you to make the money you want to make, or be the person you want to be, and you will still be just as successful as the person that went to college. The main thing and the last thing is always remain trainable. And I say that because what I've found and seen in the workplace is that so often we are entrenched in our jobs, or we get the job we have to get because we realize we have to take care of our children and we have to just keep our home stable. But what I've also heard and saw is that sometimes we're not trainable. And when we're not trainable, it limits our ability to get that job or that opportunity that we want. So I just wanted to add that. Ladies, thanks for the information that you added. It was very, very powerful.
Thank you, Nicole. I love that, remain trainable. I may have to put that in my daughter's room going forward. Great advice. Thank you all. That was wonderful. So we have a few more questions here. Let's see. An attendee is wondering if we can address equity as not a zero-sum game. In other words, access to resources and achievement for historically under-resourced groups does not take away from those who have historically benefited from entrenched systems. I saw a bumper sticker that said it's not pie. So I don't know if there's any reaction to that one.
I'm sorry, I guess I want to make sure I'm clear what the question.
Sure, it was more of a comment, I think, Nicole, but just somebody saying if we can address equity as not a zero-sum game. So in other words, access to resources and achievement for historically under-resourced groups does not take away from those who've historically benefited from those systems. And the person is saying, I saw a bumper sticker that said it's not pie. So
absolutely.
I kind of take that as I think they're saying, well, if we're putting our focus in equity and equality, then there's other people in groups that you don't have to focus on that maybe have the same skills that should also have the same opportunity, I guess is how I take it. And it's like, if we think that way, then we're never going to break the cycle. So as a person, if you are a person that is born into privilege, just do your best and continue to support other leaders. And what I have found is that if you're a good person and if you do your best, the majority of the time you're going to be recognized and you're going to get the opportunities that you feel that you deserve too. But it's our requirement to make sure that those that don't have that privilege, that we're supporting it and pushing it forward to make sure that it is equal. So I hope I answered what I think that question was.
I'll jump in there because I think I've heard that a lot. I've heard that, oh, well, I don't come from a place of privilege. I had to da myself to get myself where I am. And people do tend to think very binary. And I've gotten to a point where it's like, let's get off the binary, good, bad, either or, win, lose. It's just, sometimes it's just and. It's and. There's a third option. We don't have to be yin-yanging each other all over the place with it's either my way or it's the opposite way. We can come to a new third place. Sometimes it's yes. So because we offer some people who didn't have the privilege that others had some opportunities to better themselves, to advance, and I'll just put it over in the world of education because that's where I come from recently. You know, there's some people who need the scholarships. There are some people who need the financial aid. There are some people who need the extra support resources, tools to be successful because they didn't have it in their background. That's what inequity means. That's part of the disparity we're talking about. So it's not a zero-sum game. If they get those scholarships, that means I don't get. No, it's we're all going to get it, but there's going to be different reasons and different uses in this advancement of us all. And we will all improve as a society when those who are disadvantaged, marginalized, come from a position of being, I think of equity. I finally saw a graphic, and I'm sure you've all seen this graphic where it's 3 people and 1 person, and they're all standing. Okay, they're different heights: tall person, middle person, short person, and they're all trying to look over the fence. Have you seen this one? Okay, the short person can't see over the fence. So what do? We provide 1 box for the middle-sized person and 2 boxes for the shorter person so that everybody can now see over the fence. That's not taking anything away from the first person who doesn't need a box. So that's how I think about equity. It's just like some people, some of us need just that extra little bit to get us over the fence so that we can then be successful. And my motto is 1 hand up, 1 hand down, because we need to raise each other up. As I need a help up, I will be helping someone else up. And if we all have that mindset, then we're all improving. So it's not a zero-sum game at all. I'm so tired of the binary. So thanks for the question.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you. And I love that graphic. Did see that graphic as well, Martha. I think it's actually on the International Women's Day website. So maybe we'll send that out with our recording so people get the visual. And it really comes back to the theme for this year's event. You know, it's equity versus equality. You know, equality is not enough anymore. We need to have equity. And so, yeah, thank you for that great information. And we've received a compliment, ladies. So no questions, but wanted to say kudos to the panelists. Great conversation. So thank you for that. They haven't given their name, so I don't know who that is. We do have one other question. How do we bridge the gap as women on jealousy among each other to help empower each other? All right. Who wants to take that one on?
Oh, go ahead.
I would just simply say that has to start with ourselves. There's no way we can empower one another, encourage one another, strengthen one another, develop one another, or help each other in this tug of war of equality and equity, and not look at ourselves first to see what our potential skeletons are, because it's unfortunate. And it's an excellent question, because you do run into that a lot in the workplace and in other positions that you may hold. And my motto is that we can all benefit. We're not here to take over whatever we've been given over, being able to share the wealth of the opportunity that has been made to us. And so the jealousy is hard, but to me, I would say we have to start with ourselves. We have to also make sure we're modeling the right behavior, that we show people that I want you to know, I want you to win too. I want you to be great too. I'm not here to say that it's my team. Here at the Northside Economic Empowerment Center, I never say I always say we. And I am very intentional about, for example, I have an assistant. I've never had an assistant before. So, I have an assistant, and I am very intentional about not just treating her, but all of my colleagues equal. My assistant knows what I know, and I know what she knows, in order to make her know that she counts. Yes, she assists me, but she's my colleague first. And we together, along with the rest of our team, is what makes this Northside Economic Empowerment Center, as well as SLDC, great. It's all about just ensuring that we're able to understand from our own perspective, what is our main goal? Because if I'm jealous, then I'm stunning the growth of everything we're looking to do.
There's a cultural value dimension that it's kind of a spectrum, and on one end of the spectrum is individualism, on the other end is communitarianism, and then there's another one that on one end it's the winning competitive, and on the other end it's benevolent. I think we live in a society that is winning individualistic here, especially in St. Louis, but in America in general, and we've been trained to think, and we've been rewarded to win and be first. And if you're second, that just doesn't matter. It doesn't count. If you don't win, you're nothing. If you're not achieving, if you're not grabbing, if you're not the one at the top, then you're not important. And that's been a cultural standard here in America that I think totally fuels the jealousy. Because back to what Nicole was just saying, it does start with me, and it starts with us. Because once we start thinking in terms of more communal, benevolent, caring, as I said before, lifting one another up, right? I share your philosophy, Nicole. My entire team, we're called staff, I'm calling them team, we're all in this together. And I let them know that. It's us working together in our various roles to lift one another up. So when I'm lifted, others should be lifted. When someone else is lifted, I'm lifted. So that's kind of a new mindset, I guess, of such. It's hard because we have not been trained that way. We have not been brought up that way. We live in a male-dominated society that rewards the competitive environment and those values. So I think it's up to us women, and I think women are really, and Tim, I don't know if you're still listening or not, but I think women are really the saving grace of our society, because we're going to bring that unity amongst us and bring in some diversity. And I know that women can be the most jealous and backstabbing as well. So we've got to get out of this male-dominated mindset. And I guess I shouldn't blame all the men. Sorry, I'm not blaming all the men, but just the cultural value of competitiveness and winning.
And yes, I'm still here, Martha, and I loved it. Yes.
Except for you, Tim.
Yeah. I know we're at time, and I just want to say I agree with you both. So yeah, the change has to happen within. We can't really change other people. So we have to do it and just continue to focus and support the right path forward.
Great. Thank you both. Wonderful, wonderful words. We could go on, and we have gone over. So it just remains for me to say thank you so much for sharing your stories and your journey, and for those really heartfelt comments. I really felt like with this particular seminar, we really got really addressed some deep topics there. So a lot to unpack. So thank you so much. I look forward to the recording so I can take this in properly. Thank you also to our attendees, and want to wish you all a very happy International Women's Day. A reminder that you will receive a copy of this recording in the coming days, and remember to join us for future events in the Engage in Trade series. We also have an in-person networking reception coming up on May 25th, so please join us for that as well. And in the interim, take care. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.